Okay, it's Monday, February 4th at 11:05. We're going to call the meeting to order. I'm going to call the order and roll call. Lee Warren.
Here.
Brad Phillips.
Here.
Sean Emmerich.
Here.
Barbara Evans.
Barbara back on?
Stephen Reinhardt.
Here.
Will Williams.
Here.
And
Commissioner Arriaga? Commissioner, are you on the phone?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think you muted me.
I apologize.
okay, welcome to our meeting.
I'll mute you from my
Commissioner.
side.
Okay, thank you, sir.
And Barbara's not on the phone.
Dr. Evans, are you on the phone?
I'm on. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you.
That was
So
my
you're
fault.
here.
I apologize.
Okay, and then we're going to ask the staff to go around the table, starting with Mr. Slagle.
Tony Slagle, Deputy Executive Director.
Carrie Lewis, General Counsel.
Denise Sample, Licensing Manager.
Michael Molloy, Staff Attorney.
Oh, Mike Sample Deal, Education Specialist.
That's it.
And that's it. All righty. Welcome, everybody.
Madam Chair.
Okay.
I just want to make an announcement. This is the meeting where you can get CE credit, so that's why Mike is here. Make sure you sign the roster and make sure you sign out. He's going to take attendance. Make sure that you don't sneak out of here. You're not going to get credit for it. So if you haven't seen him or signed in yet, please do that before the meeting ends. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Tony. Okay, agenda item 2, discussion and possible action to excuse committee members' absences, if any. And I don't know that we've had any absences. Matt Hart has resigned.
Resigned,
He's no
right.
longer, so
Right.
it's not on the list. Okay. And agenda item 3, ratification of the minutes of the December 3rd, 2018 meeting. Did everybody have a chance to read those minutes? Any changes? Nope.
That's a yes.
Motion
Okay.
to ratify the minutes?
I make a motion we accept the minutes from the December 3rd meeting.
Yep. You're the second. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so general comments on an agenda item 4, general comments from visitors on non-agenda items. No? And Mike, because you said all. I don't want this all. All right.
It's a wild card.
That's a while. I just have to ask every single one.
I'll leave my hand in there.
Okay, so now we're going to go on to agenda item 5, election of officers.
I would propose we postpone the election of officers till after the commission meeting and find out who the new appointees are.
Okay, so do we want to have discussion among the committee members currently, Lee, whether you want to do that or whether you think you should go ahead and
Well,
say
let me just ask first off, what's kind of held this up as far as getting new committee members? I think it's the first time I've seen one where we've had the February meeting.
Oh, it happens regularly.
Yeah, and that's something that we're going to recommend a rule change to. But there are 6 vacancies: 2 inspector committee members and 3 public members. The interview committee is weighing all the options available, and there have been 2 current members that have expressed a desire to be reappointed, and there have been 2 new public member applications. So without speaking for the interview committee, it's likely those will move forward, at least for the chair to consider
At the February
meeting. And then then they're looking at interviewing for the other inspector member vacancy, but that'll be after the February committee meeting. So
Which committee meeting?
Our commission meeting. I'm sorry.
Commission meeting
I'm sorry.
on the 11th.
Thank you.
So what we have is, we don't know who the new members are, so we don't have to appoint any, or reappoint any of the committees today. All we're trying to do is elect officers for next year. And probably we would elect the officers, there's only 3, right? Chair, vice chair, and secretary.
Yes, ma'am.
Out of those that have been on the committee
Right.
for a while, so that's probably, I think we should go ahead.
So right
Yeah.
I think we should go ahead and do that.
Right now, we have 3 members that we know are on the committee without being reappointed.
We have 4, myself, you, Sean, and Doyle.
I think you could consider the folks that have asked to be reappointed, because there's been, as far as I know, no opposition. If for some reason they didn't get reappointed, then, you could rehold that election. But all indications that I've seen is that they're likely to be reappointed.
Okay, so then,
So y'all,
If you didn't want to wait, I mean,
Right.
you
y'all
could.
two are for reappointment?
I thought you were.
He's already been here twice.
yeah,
Okay.
he's not up for, that means Lee is that, and Barbara Evans is also
Okay,
up for.
okay, I was trying to figure out who the second.
Yeah,
I was
it's
figuring out.
fine.
Okay.
I mean, there are 1-term limits, but the limits aren't.
That's what they did 6 years ago, but they have obviously not upheld that.
Your
Okay.
2-term limits.
So let's,
I'm actually over 2 terms.
let's go ahead and I will ask for nominations for chair.
I'll nominate Lee.
Any other nominations?
Just looking at 20. Oh, you're paying for this?
Doyle, do you have anybody you want to nominate?
I do not.
This is where Lee nominates Sean.
I'll nominate Sean.
Okay.
I mean, everybody here has been here and qualified to do it.
Right, I agree.
Absolutely.
All right, so we have Lee Warren and we have Sean Emmerich as the 2 nominated. Do we do all the nominations first, or do I do each position?
I would do each position.
Okay.
That will make it easier,
Okay,
since you have a limited number of people to choose.
so everybody that would like to vote for Lee as the incoming chair?
I think I'm gonna
Can
decline.
I vote on this?
I'm gonna decline the nomination.
Okay.
I don't mind being chair at some point, but.
You don't want to do it, okay. And am I allowed to vote?
Yes.
Okay. So I vote for Lee. You nominated him, so that's 2. Steve. Well, he's really the only one right now. So this is really silly.
But there's still a debate,
All
apparently.
right, well, I think, Doyle, you,
I'm fine with that.
okay. So Lee Warren is going to be the incoming chair for 2019. Okay, so nominations for vice chair?
I nominate Sean.
So
I'm getting you. I do payback.
Do you want to be
Well,
vice chair,
miss you.
Sean?
Sure, I'll accept it.
Okay.
That means when he's sick, you gotta be.
I know, that's what I'm trying to figure out how many gonna do.
Yeah.
I don't know if I
Okay.
can food all that.
Any other nominations? Okay. So, by consensus,
You.
Sean, you're vice chair.
He's the only one on the ballot.
2019, there you go. And then secretary.
I'll nominate Steve Reinhardt.
For secretary?
She didn't even get the sentence out of her mouth.
I don't look good with her.
Need your print dress.
Okay.
Do you accept the nomination?
Sure.
It's just you look at the minutes
That's-
and
I
then
was
you
gonna
approve
say
them.
that.
Yeah, you look at them, you spend hours going through them.
You did that like 8 years ago when I had to actually write all this stuff down. So
It's not, yeah.
It's recorded.
I've done it. It's
he
not
made me
super
secretary
time
when they had to, before recordings. I had to write them all down and put out a report.
So now it's gonna be like a walk in the park.
Basically reviewing and for accuracy and.
Yeah.
Yes.
Make sure all the motions and
I
everything.
can do that.
All right, so Stephen Reinhardt, you are our only nominee for secretary.
I know what that
So
means.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye. I'm probably gonna get it.
Aye.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you, Barbara.
Aye, yes.
So that means that Lee Warren is our new chair. So I get up and trade places with him, right?
Yeah.
Move my food. Can you move all that food up there?
Oh.
You can
well,
stay there if you want to. There's no reason you have to be at the head of the table.
I got a face made for radio.
Do you have an
anyway.
agenda?
Yeah. All right, so item number 6, reports from subcommittees.
Madam Chair, this is Adrian. Can I make a comment before we move on?
Sure. I'll be madam now.
Can you hear me?
Sure.
Mr. Chair, forgive me. This is Adrian Arriaga. I apologize for not being there, but I got to be there this week for a couple of days. So this is the only one I'm going to hopefully, probably one of my last meetings, because as most of you know, I'm one of 2 commissioners on the Real Estate Commission, been there for 12 years. So my term should be coming up, and if it isn't, it should. The only thing I want to recommend to you is that we had and you've been following the sunset review process. One thing I've always recommended on our commission is that we need to start looking at rotating leadership. On the Real Estate Commission, of course, the governor appoints the chair, and then we use a political process to nominate the rest of the officers, vice chair and secretary. It is possible to rotate chairs. There's nothing magic about being an officer other than committing to understanding parliamentary procedure and the process if you're going to be chair. Other than that, everybody needs to be considered giving a position in leadership. I know that this is not very accepted by everybody, but I hope that in the future you consider looking at something like this. Thank you for listening to me.
Well, appreciate your input. I think Steve is the only one who's actually served in a current position previously. Sean has never been vice chair, and I've never been chair. So we actually are flushing through this pretty good.
Kudos, because there's nothing magical. You got great staff to keep you out of trouble, and it's important everybody has a hands-on position if they want to.
All right. Thank you very much, and thank you for your service. 12 years. That's a lot of time you've taken away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Thank you.
Item number 6, reports from subcommittees. Standards Practice Subcommittee, Mr. Goa.
We haven't met since the last committee meeting. After we get through this, we can set up a time, or we can do that now. Do we do that now? Set up a time for a date?
You can if you like. One caveat to that is because now that I'm the chair, I can no longer be on that committee. Correct? I mean, the chair is not on the individual subcommittees.
Right. A chair is an ex officio member of all of the committees.
Right.
Can go or not go as need be. I would recommend waiting until you
get the new members.
Get the new members, because I don't think, even though they won't be the other new members that aren't being reappointed, and the new public members will also be appointed this February, but those that aren't, I don't think you have to wait. I don't think the commission chair has to wait to May to appoint them. She can appoint them after the interview committee makes a decision and forwards that up to her.
Sure.
So we can get them on board sooner, and then maybe at that point, when you know who the committee assignments are after the new chair makes those.
We'll need to make sure that their dates coincide with times they could attend that subcommittee meeting as well. If you want to just appoint one of those incomings to our subcommittee, I'm fine with that.
Actually, what I'd rather do is appoint you, because you have a familiarity with it. Because she attended most of those, or some of those, standards meetings.
Right.
So at least you have an idea of what's going on. So basically, we're swapping places.
Okay.
So at least you would already have a lot of the background that's already there.
Absolutely.
All right, so Enforcement Subcommittee did not meet. Education Subcommittee, I heard you guys might have.
They didn't do anything. We have suggested and will be bringing forward a paradigm shift on how we're going to license, how we foresee licensing and training for the licensing. And to say that if you're not familiar with it, I mean, it's in the further agenda, but that's where we're looking at is complying with the sunset recommendation to streamline the education training for inspectors and licensing. So that's what we'll be going over and working on.
I figure we'll go in a lot more detail here in a little
Yes.
bit. Right? Okay.
You want to mention the other agenda or item that you,
Oh, the
that's not
other-
on this agenda, but that you
The other
addressed?
agenda item which we forwarded was a modification to the wait time after failing a
Exam.
Course exam.
Course exam with the providers. In the past, it was 3 days, and we're making a recommendation that the wait time would be the number of hours of the course you failed.
And that's not on this agenda, but they were able to address it, and it'll be on a future agenda for the inspector committee.
We voted to forward that to the full committee.
Yeah.
But it was just at
Not
a
enough
point
time.
where it never made it on this agenda.
And it will also go to the ESAC committee because it affects all license types.
Yeah, it's a rule that is overarching, one of those.
Alright. Is that it? Alright. One thing that I did not see on the agenda was staff reports.
Number 7.
Oh, sorry, I'm like, I always look above higher. I'm like, where is that? I apologize. Staff reports. All right, administration and management services.
I guess that would be me, Tony Slagle, Deputy Executive Director. As everyone knows, we finished up our sunset, the auditing process of it. We are now awaiting the bill. I've been told the bill has been drafted and is in Ledge Council waiting to be released and filed. It has not yet been filed, so we don't know exactly what the recommendations are going to be. There are, however, several management recommendations that don't necessarily require legislative change, and staff has been working diligently with the policymakers as well to try to get those in line. There's some reporting requirements that are upcoming that we're working with the policymakers on making sure we're in line with that as well. The legislature is also in session. In terms of bills that we're looking at that would impact you guys, there's not a whole lot on the agenda. There is one bill that I think you guys might want to be aware of, which is HB 591. And that doesn't necessarily impact you guys, but what it is, it does address an issue that the committee has addressed several times, and that's CSST. It would, if passed as drafted or as filed, it would require notification on the seller's disclosure for the seller to notify the type of plumbing used to plumb. Yeah. And like anything on the seller's disclosure, it's based on knowledge of the seller, but it would be something they'd be required to put on the seller's disclosure.
Would that be on the TREC form or the TAR
Yes.
form?
No. When it's legislative, it's something that we
be on
promulgate
both.
that form, and then the TREC forms or the TAR forms a little bit. They have things on there that we're not required to have on there, but it would be on both.
But it's still what's known by the seller.
Right, there'll be a box they could say,
Because they're usually
don't know.
like,
Yeah.
they don't know anything.
What's that?
It's all unknown.
Well, yeah, I mean, unless
Unless
someone
they
called it out,
know.
and they know, then they have to do it. But that's
But your belief is it wouldn't modify what we're already doing.
I don't know if it would or not. I mean, as written, it's just I mean, I don't know if there's anything on the social disclosure you guys are required to report now, so that would be a change in
We're not in the
procedure.
loop
But
to even see
We
them.
don't see them.
If we see them, it's by accident.
Right.
They left
Yeah.
it in the house.
I usually don't want them. I want somebody else's idea of what they think is wrong with the property before.
So-
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm trying to think of what else. The commission meeting, for those of you who are not aware, is a 2-day meeting this go around. It'll be Monday and Tuesday. A lot of that is to deal with the sunset issues, as well as the typical business
And
that
the
happens.
dates, February the
It's
11th and
12th.
Next Monday, Tuesday.
But
Yes.
we're not on the agenda until like the 11th, right?
I don't know.
Yes, your staff reports, committee reports are on the 11th,
On the first day?
first day.
It could be any time in 2 days.
Stop it. Just stop.
Good room.
But as
I'll send my secretary.
And as the session progresses, anytime there's a bill that is filed that would impact the inspector industry, I will obviously notify you guys via email, and then I'll provide any updates, answer any questions as those go forward. Look at this stuff every day, and as of right now, there's nothing that's. So. there anything that's it. That's all I got.
Standards and enforcement services?
Mike Malloy, Standards and Enforcement Services. The first 2 pages of the actions that the Enforcement Division took since your last meeting, and then the other 3 subsequent pages are just accumulation of everything we've done for the first so far this year. So there was 8 actions, or 8 formal disciplinary actions done since your last meeting.
There's a lot of activity in the last few months.
It comes in waves, I've seen, so.
People are still using the wrong form. Yes, sir. What's your name?
Scott Regan, Texas Real Estate Education Training. I have a question about the people using the wrong form. Do you actually look at the provider that they're training with, of their past education or continued education?
No.
See where they're getting their education from?
No.
Some of them are 15 years ago.
I understand, but there's a few that are on here that are new that have been in business in the past 3 years. That's my only question. Is
We don't look at that. We look at the fact that they used the wrong form, so.
Yeah.
Don't try to shift blame to
No, I'm just
but I
asking
mean,
a question.
it's a good idea, because I have looked at these and printed out like the last 5 or 6 years to see if there's trends of things that should be maybe emphasized in the training, in their primary training, or continuing it. And that's some of the things we're doing in the education, is looking at the biannual review of the legal ethics and SOP, and that's probably what would be added in there are things that are repetitive. Yeah.
Because we're going on 4 years now for this form, right?
Yes.
2015?
Yes.
Yes.
14, 15?
15. What's 2-1 software? They're using proprietary software.
But it should still be up to date. They're required to meet truck standards also.
Well, no, I'm just saying, if they're using the big guys, they're up to date. They're using proprietary, their own built.
Well,
It
hopefully
varies.
they'll
I mean,
only do it
sometimes it's
once.
software related, but I mean, really,
Yeah.
you're supposed to catch that.
There's
Typically, though, there's a lot of other issues
Yeah.
than the form when the complaint comes in here.
Right, well,
It's
the
not
form
usually
isn't even the
focus.
complaint.
No,
Yeah.
I mean, it's very rare, like occasionally we'll get an inspector saying, I saw this, looks like they used the wrong form.
Yeah.
But usually it's from a client or, a buyer seller, and we just noticed that. And the other stuff, just, there wasn't any evidence to
Right.
support a violation, so.
What's our time from a complaint filed now to action at this point, do you know, Michael?
Well, on average, we close the majority of our complaints within 1 year of filing.
Okay.
An average, yeah. I mean, if what our standards are is if complaints coming up to be in a year, it needs to be set at so or closed one way or another, so.
Takes a while, they go through a lot of investigation.
Most of it is, you decide you take it, kind of what's it, so you decide to take it and then you,
Well, that would
Is
be
there some
someone's
timeline?
decision. Most of these are all agreed orders on here, so they're agreeing to settlement.
some of them are a lot quicker than that.
Oh, yes, yes. Most of these, I mean, we close the majority of the complaints in under 6 months. I think our stats are close to 90% or something like that for under 6 months for complaints as a whole, so.
It sounded like they can argue that they weren't using the wrong form.
No, I mean, that's what some of those are. It's
Yeah.
pretty black and white,
Yep.
so.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Malloy?
No.
Anybody have any questions, Mr. Malloy? Education and licensing services?
Denise Sample, licensing manager. The first is the L1 report through December of 2018, showing the total original applications received is 174, total licenses issued from original applications 288. And then we've got the renewal activity, compares last year to date, this year to date, and then fiscal year 2016, which is the group of people that renewed in December because it's a 2-year renewal cycle. So we're pulling that data there. The next report is the license holder and registrant status count. Towards the middle of the report has the total inspector count, 4,103, as of December 2018. That includes active and inactive. The third report is the inspector exam activity report, also a fiscal year-to-date comparison from last December 2017, this past December 2018, showing the first-time pass rate and overall pass rate for real estate and professional inspector.
So the first time pass rate for real estate inspector is 16%?
That's the exam pass rate. The first attempt pass rate is that third item there, 10%.
10%.
10%.
So of the
And
10.
we broke professional at 40.8%.
Yes.
And it was 47% the previous year.
Can I ask a question about this report? When we were in the inspector, in the education subcommittee meeting, there was, it was said that they do not even get the failing, they don't know that somebody's failed until after they've taken it 3 times.
This is provided by Pearson VUE.
Okay, so that's what I was asking, is who
Right.
provides this report? Because I didn't realize it was
Who gives you the
provided.
data?
Pearson VUE.
Pearson VUE. Okay, so I
Provides
didn't
the
catch
monthly-
that
I
until I
did.
happened to hear
I remember
the education
when they were
subcommittee.
here and we were doing the review test, we got some data from them, but that's where I kind of put together that if somebody fails, TREC is not even involved until the 3rd time and they got to get a reauthorization.
Okay.
But that number is it's on a pretty straight decline since we went to the national. It started near 60.
And just
For both of them?
It's kept going down.
Yeah, well,
Pass rate.
It doesn't break
the
down.
pass rate for the Texas module has been pretty high individually. So
Yeah.
you don't have individual. This is total.
No, this
So
is
when Pearson
both.
VUE was here, we asked that question, and they were able to kind of backdoor around and look at some of the statistics. First time pass rate on the Texas module was over 90%, 92% or so.
Right.
And the national was like 37. So what we're getting is the compile, so if you pass both the first time, you're at 40.8%. That's the percentage that are doing both. But the Texas module from September, I think, like this starts 1 September, the numbers Pearson VUE had, it was over 90% pass rate for the Texas module. So that wasn't our problem.
And so the pass rates, when we switched to the NHIE test, have gone down
Yes.
consistently.
Well, we started out well,
Right.
and then each year it's gone down. Now the question, like Ms. Evans brought up, is it the type of people that are coming to school or more challenged than they were 10 years ago? I don't know. There's a lot of variables that
It's
come
hard to
into
say
play.
it's content, because the house is what it is. I mean, we don't exactly,
Well, and
we
we're
don't know
hoping
that anything's changed.
we hope we address this
Right.
with the change in the way we train.
Well, remember, we also lowered the pass rate.
But that shouldn't have anything, I get lower, that should have made it
That
better.
should have made it better.
It's-
Should have made it
it's
better.
There was a bump.
Yeah.
If you
Well,
if you
yeah.
graphed out all the years since we've been there was a little bump.
Right.
And we thought, oh, that's great. And then the next year, it kept going down the trajectory. And so for the first time pass rate for the national, what I saw, we're at 37 and change.
Well, this is a pretty big decline just in even applications right now in the last quarter compared to the last quarter of 2017. to
Was that
2018.
4103 licensed?
Right, but just the number of
Now-
applications
Yes.
that received. It went from 266 in the professional in the last quarter of December to 149 in the last quarter of 2018.
And I don't know how that compares seasonally. I don't know if starting a new
Maybe
career
people,
is seasonal.
yeah,
I think
maybe
it's just a market shift.
economic and things like that, people are changing careers.
I don't know if this is true or not, but just anecdotally I've heard that the inspection industry is always the kind of the first to sort of,
The leading indicator.
yeah, the leading indicator when things start to slow down a little bit.
It was 10 years ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I don't know how true that is, I've just heard that.
It's not good.
I mean,
So-
maybe there's a saturation point. I don't know.
That's
We've
an
got
odd-
more inspectors than we've had in a long time.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
Yeah.
No, it's fine.
That's the $100 bid.
I mean, from our low, we're almost double active, full-time type.
And just while we're down, although we're down, if you look at the total active, it's only really it's less than was 12, I guess 12 inspectors from the last one. So
It's not too much different from last year.
yeah, I mean,
But we'll start seeing, I think we'll start seeing that shift down.
Okay.
Anyway, Mr. East.
If there's no questions, the last report is the instructor distribution. The bottom half shows the instructor distribution through December of 2018.
Gained right along and lost.
And if there's no questions, that concludes my report.
I know it's already on it.
All right, item number 8, update regarding broker required payment for inclusion on preferred service provider lists and possible conflict with 22 TAC 535-220 professional conduct and ethics.
You want me to give it?
Go ahead.
Okay. So we put this issue before the Broker Responsibility Working Group. And Lee was there, and another inspector was on the phone, and basically we talked about the problems. I think all the brokers on the Broker Responsibility Working Group were receptive that this is an issue. There needs to be some parity. I had drafted some language that basically took the language that's in the inspector rule and inserted it in the rule that will apply to brokers. So they didn't move it forward for the February meeting. They're waiting on some other guidance from the commission on some legislative items that are before them. But we've had enough comments throughout that I think that I'm gonna recommend that this get taken to the executive. If the Broker Responsibility Working Group doesn't meet before the May meeting, before this next inspector meeting in April, that the executive committee maybe take a look at it, and so that we could possibly get it on the agenda for proposal in May. Then we go through the comment period. There was some concern at the Broker Responsibility Working Group that some of the large brokers who make money at this are going to give a lot of pushback if they're violating the law, which although it's not clear in the rules, to me, I think they are in violation of RESPA. And I did some extra research on RESPA, and that's what I'll be presenting to the commission in May. Well, maybe not in May.
Right.
We'll see. But the recommendation going forward to the executive committee would be that this is something that needs to get taken care of, and needs to get taken care of soon, because it seems to be mushrooming and getting out of control, and it's putting the inspectors in a very awkward position. Yeah.
So the disparity is bringing the real estate into
so that they cannot pay or
conformity.
receive.
Yeah, and
just
so it
like
wouldn't-
the inspectors are.
So your proposal right now wouldn't change anything that we know as inspectors.
Well, except that the real estate brokers wouldn't be able to say, you got to pay to be on this list, basically, or to market to our
I
people.
mean, we can't give them any money, but they're asking for it.
Exactly.
Right now, it's against the rule for us to give them money. It's not against the rule for them to ask us to.
Right.
Yes.
So we're gonna make it clear that it is, and that they really need to check with somebody, in RESPA. But there are a few advertising and affiliation exceptions. Again, they're gonna have to seek outside counsel if they think they're doing that. I will mention that in the last, 6 weeks ago or so, Trek put an article out there that talked about this disparity, talked about make sure you're not violating RESPA for all the brokers to see. And if inspectors and if association people are here, feel free to get that article off of our website and give it to brokers who are asking you.
When you said you were getting a lot of comments, and that's why you were wanting to go to executive.
We've
How many comments?
gotten several, at least 2 or 3 more letters where people are saying, "Can they do this? Why are they doing this? This doesn't seem right. Doesn't seem ethical." From
brokers?
inspectors.
Oh, from inspectors.
From inspectors.
I'm getting it from inspectors and home warranty companies. I mean, a number of different.
Yeah, I mean, it's
they're all
not
going
just
the same.
inspectors,
Right.
it's all the service providers, and all of those are named as service providers under RESPA, which is in the inspector rule, and for some reason, there was not a corollary. There's general language in the rule for the real estate side, brokers and sales agents, but it's not really lined out, so they're pushing at all the gray edges, and I think they've crossed the line. So we'll make it clear.
Advertising.
Yeah.
Well, and that's just it. We're
Right.
not trying to keep them from doing advertising. The problem that we're running into is when you start excluding service providers from even walking in the door talking to your agents if you don't pay money.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to do.
Exclusive preferred vendor.
Right.
Right. Right.
You know, it's one thing if you pay money and you're doing sponsoring their lunches and okay, you want to do that advertising, that's fine. But to sit and say you can't come in and put your cards on the big table, or you can't come into our office if you don't pay money, that's where we're running into a problem.
Well,
Right.
make you pay to advertise.
But you can't
That's the way they've
exclude.
gotten around it for the last
I
Right.
agree. That's what I
But
said.
But
that's
in
the
their
game.
paperwork, they specifically say and I had one that I proposed,
Yeah.
and I'm getting other service providers that are sending me the programs that they're being bullied into or pushed into trying to do this, so that we have all the information.
Right.
Because when we presented this to the work group, there's a couple of them goes, whatnot, that they know what's going on. There's a couple of them that didn't realize how much money is being asked
Right.
of these service providers and the sheer dollar amounts that are being asked for a lot of people. And I think that was a bit of a wake-up call. And there is
Right.
concern about the big companies having some blowback because it is a huge revenue stream for some of these companies. But that's not really our problem.
Right.
Our problem is to make sure it's fair across the board.
Right, and so I will say that we are committed, we hear you, we hear that there is a disparity there, and we will move a rule forward, and we'll go through the process. Can't guarantee what the commission does or does not do, but we will move it forward.
Mike?
Is this going to address...
Stand up, say your name, please.
Sorry, Mike Marlowe. Is this going to address the franchise home inspection companies being able to pay that fee
For the territory.
for the territory, and then, so now you got that one phone call or phone number that's going in, but it's not an inspector that's actually doing paying the money. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and we'll write it broadly enough, but, yeah, franchise agreements, I am not sure. I haven't looked at that with RESPA. But if it's an end run around the intent of RESPA, and I looked at some cases, and it was very clear, the language that they used in these cases, where they talked about brokerages doing this, and I think it was a mortgage lender that was this one case, but they talk about, the independence and the reliance of the client of the real estate license holder, and taking advantage of that. And if that's what they're doing, then, and you can file, I know no one wants to file complaints. You can file complaints with RESPA. I know no one wants to because, you still want the business. So you're in a very awkward position. So we'll try and get some parity in the rules.
Any other comments or questions on that? Okay, moving on to item number 9, discussion of possible action regarding comments received for inspector rules for adoption, the rules of February 11th, 2019 meeting, commission meeting. I won't list those individually, but
Rules of the February 11th. That's next week.
correct.
Oh, proposed for them, okay.
Okay, so these rules were proposed, they were up for adoption, and they got pulled because there was a technical error with the 8 hours that got changed. They're back up for adoption. We didn't get any comments on them except for Mr. Harbuck's, and it's the same comments he's been giving all along. He wants to keep that other option for the ride-along option. So, based on all the comments, these were put on here for our normal procedure. If you guys want to say yes, move them forward for adoption. I think we should maybe table this agenda item until after the other one, because I think there's an additional consideration. If the committee wants to go forward with the new education scheme, the new education legislative proposal, which would be followed by rules, you could decide, you don't have to, you could decide to not do anything right now with these rules, since they're all going to be rewritten within the next 9 months. Or, since we've gone through this process and these will make it better during that intervening 9-month period, you could still move forward and recommend that these be adopted because we're not exactly sure when a new system and new rules would be adopted.
Knowing what we're looking at adopting, is there something in this that would?
All
be
the hours,
beneficial?
all the hours about what you,
These would essentially be rewritten.
No,
pretty
I mean,
much.
If in the intermeaning, in the time in between, would there be a benefit to getting these adopted? Is there something in here?
Is there something in here? Well, the changing the ride-along to 2 students, that's in here. So that would, you know,
But that would be consistent with what we made the other change anyway, most likely.
most likely, but we haven't written those rules
I
yet.
would say vote, I would
I'd
say
say
put it
vote it
forward.
in.
I would say.
I would say vote it in. My concern is you never know when something is going
Right.
to happen
You
on
know,
the
this could be
back.
Right,
We're
yeah,
talking
because
to
these
be
other
a year.
rules could be a year. So, yeah,
Right.
just wanted you to be aware of that.
Yeah.
That's a major thing.
People have already put,
I
they
want
put
to
the
move
work in.
forward with it, take it forward.
Is that the most substantial thing in here? Is-
What else, Tony, was a substantial
Just
change? in
removing
these?
that one item that Mr. Harbaugh
And
had.
removing the item the
1660.
video item.
Right, that's
in lieu
secondary,
of the
that's
ride-along.
less hours of ride-along and more allowable, that no one has, there's not even a course
Approved at this
approved for
point.
that yet.
Right.
So,
Okay.
My opinion, we ought to move forward with that.
Well, I think.
Oh,
that-
and then the other thing is CE
Oh,
credits
that's
for
right.
courses
Thank
taken
you.
by persons who hold another occupational license.
that's a
I think
big,
those two, I think
That's worth moving
taking
forward.
down this
Yeah.
ratio is a big, important step,
Yep.
regardless of.
While we're
when we
waiting
the
to
major
do all the
That's
changes.
other
all the feedback we've
Okay.
had from people that are in these big classes on ride-along.
Yes. That and the taking the CE as a smaller one, but it's a good faith gesture towards the ones that are spending a lot of time with those CEs, that they can get something for them.
Sure. I just want to throw it out there. It's totally your decision which way you want to go.
So if we, I will leave it up for if anybody would like to make a motion to,
I'll make a motion to move forward. Take it.
motion made by Brad. Is that for all items A through F?
I will
Okay.
second the motion to adopt all items A through F, or taken to the commission to be adopted.
Second by Diana. Is there any other further discussion on this item? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no.
Aye.
Thank you, Barbara. Motion passes. Item number 10, discussion and possible action regarding streamlining inspector pre-licensing education requirements to ensure that content aligns with the inspector licensing exam subject matter in accordance with the Sunset Commission's Management Directive 2.6.
I just want to remind you that there may be some people who asked to speak on.
I apologize. I had asked for their comments, but I could have addressed that directly. I apologize, Dan.
Well, you've already voted on it now.
You're right. I apologize. We do have a copy of your comments in our packet that did come with everything that was here, right?
Yes.
And just to be fair, to be clear, you already voted in December to move this forward. This was just to give you another, since this was another meeting before the commission, if any further comments came forward. So it's consistent with what you did in December.
Right. And I apologize, Dan. I should have let you address that. So item number 10, discussion and possible action regarding streamlining inspector pre-licensing education. Steve?
You're up there, boy.
Well, what the Education Subcommittee has proposed to the full committee is really a big paradigm shift of where we're at now. The whole proposal, in a nutshell, mainly for the ones that weren't here earlier, is going from the two licensing pathway, well, 3. The apprentice will still be there, but the 3, taking it to 1. And there's a lot of reasons the real estate inspector path is not used very much at all. So the biggest complaints, the biggest things we're trying to fix, 2 things we're trying to fix. 1, to make the training in line with the national exam. We're also trying to simplify, or as the Sunset calls, streamline, is to simplify the program. If anybody has looked at the program for licensing now, it's very confusing. So many different options for different ways. And also, the goal is to make it easier to absorb for the trainee to separate the national exam and the state exam, and to have an entry point for reciprocity from other states. I mean, it's addressing a lot of things. So instead of having the two pathways, real estate inspector and professional inspector, is basically merging the two together and coming up with an hour education requirement somewhere in between.
So it's going to be easier to become a professional inspector?
I don't think, if
Still have to
if
take
you
a test.
correlate hours with
Yeah, but-
easier, it's less hours.
So you go from an apprentice to an inspector.
You can be an apprentice. Right now, a vast majority of our inspectors are never an apprentice, never a real estate. They go straight fast track to professional. So they have no license, they have no application in with TREC until they are ready to apply for their exam. That's the first notice that TREC knows they exist. They're never apprenticed. They've gone through the whole program. They're ready to set for the exam, and they've, in all possibility, have never done a full home inspection and filled out a report.
So why do we keep the apprentice?
Because there's still, there is that, I think most of the senior inspectors would love that the apprentice be the only path.
Yeah.
I would.
And there's still, well.
But it needs to be a little more durable.
Well, I think.
So the idea is also this allows for the apprentice path in that they come in to the program halfway through this, after this Texas Module 2 section. So everybody needs to take all of the training to take the national exam. Whether you're an apprentice before you get licensed to go out, whether you're a real estate or professional, you have to train for the national exam. So we just set that aside as the education requirements is you go train for the national exam. Don't do anything with Texas. No Texas SOP or anything. You do the national exam, and then our goal is to go take the national exam. You pass it, and you come back around. Now I'm going to learn everything Texas. I'm going to do the Texas 20-hour module, legal and ethics, SOP, and the hands-on will now integrate, instead of just 10-on-1, it'll probably be 2-on-1 by then, going to the houses, putting application to the things you learned in school on all these systems, and then building on that as part of the hands-on is to actually do an inspection, provide a satisfactory report. As all part of the school training, it's kind of a pseudo apprentice. We call it a practicum. So you're actually, I mean, you can call it a fast track because you don't have a sponsor. You're going through a school, but when you graduate school, you've done inspections and you've filled out reports. And then once you finish this Texas module section, you take the Texas test. And the benefit of separating them is some of the students now, unless you're a really good test taker, you're studying for the national exam, the Texas SOP. There is some overlap and place for confusion. So you separate them. You don't learn anything Texas. You go to the national, you take all the national, you take the test, you swing back around. Now we start everything Texas. And you learn the little tweaks. You build off of the national stuff, and here's what we do different in Texas. Here's our legal and ethics, our administrative requirements, and you do some reports, and you speak and talk in Texas. You finish the national, and like most of us, we have the ability to kind of flush things that we know we'll never see again. We retain the basic building blocks, we reinforce those with the Texas module, learn everything Texas, and just build up from the academic stuff of everything in Texas to go put your hands on it and touch it, then inspect it and do a report. And once the provider says you're good there, you get a certificate. Now you go take the Texas module.
So no longer a combined test separating the two exams apart?
You can take them all at once.
Okay.
If you have logistical issues to where I can't go to Pearson View twice, which I think they're pretty well saturated. I mean, they're around a lot of places. But if you can't, nothing says you can't take them both at once. The preferred method is do the national exam. Don't confuse yourself with anything Texas. Take the national exam, pass it, come back around, and we still have the requirement. You can retake it. You can retake it up to 3 times. After 3 times, you come back, you probably end up taking one of these first 2 basic building block modules based on what you failed with. But once you pass it, then you go back and you start everything Texas. Flush all the nationals.
Currently, when you take the test, it's when you go to Pearson VUE and you sign up to take the test, it is 2 separate modules at
2 separate
Pearson VUE.
tests.
Okay, so it's 2 separate
2
tests.
separate time tests.
Okay.
One is, how many questions?
But you don't have
200.
the opportunity to only sign up for one. You have to, if
Well,
you're...
Pearson
Right.
VUE can
They-
do it.
they-
You're going for both, okay.
Pearson, if you're in another state, you're only taking one. So Pearson
Right.
VUE has the ability just to do the one. It's
Right.
an administrative thing when you sign up, because if you take them both now and you fail the national, you're only going to sign up for one. If you fail the state, you're only going to take that one. So the ability of signing up for just one test at a time is in place now, but it's in place for retesting.
Okay.
So initial testing, so once they finish the national testing, they submit the paperwork to TREC. TREC provides an authorization for the national, you take the national. If you're doing them both, you supply everything just like now, and you get an authorization to take 2 tests.
So this is for new licensees. What about current licensed inspectors? Would they be required at some point to go back and take the national exam?
Yeah, you mean old guys like us?
Just wondering.
No, there's never been a requirement, although I've entertained a 3 renewal retest or something. Yeah, I mean, there is something to it. There's a lot of guys that
I think
have,
that ought to start about 2029.
Well, I'm just saying, if the new guys coming in have to be held to a certain standard.
well, they are now. The
Yeah.
idea is
Yeah.
we're just separating these 2. So for the last 5 years, 6 years, they've been held to
Yeah.
taking the national. Now some of the other things that this brings to the table is true reciprocity with other states. You come from a state, and this is what I recommend, you come from a state that has mandatory national testing to inspect in their state, whether it's a registration or a license, and say you've been there a year. Come up with something so you're just not getting somebody that's going there to take the test. So you've been here a year and a testing in a state, you want to come here, you have a start point. You are here, this is what you have to take to get a license here. It's really gray now. Most of my correspondence with prospective inspectors is, I can't make heads or tail of what I have to do to get licensed. And if you're coming from another state, it's even grayer. You know, so this is a starting point. You've already done your national. You don't have any, I mean, you hit the ground running. You're going to learn everything Texas, and you're going to be in a class with the guys that just took the national here. You'll have a little more experience. You may feel it's a little early to go do an inspection, but the intent is to train you how to do a Texas SOP inspection and a Texas product, because you may have a lot of experience and you're going to apply it, but you still need to bring it back into conformance with Texas. So I think someone coming from out of state, they know exactly where they're going to come in. They just sign up for the 2 Texas modules at a provider, and then they can take the Texas exam, and then they're licensed.
Is there any conversations about making it mandatory to have field experience?
Well,
That's required.
That's in your
Well,
look at
the field trips, but.
Go to
if
the
you
bottom.
go
But like,
the-
if you're an apprentice in the pest control world, you have to work so many hours in the field, not on field trips, but you have to work.
Well, that would be
Before
a
you
pure,
can take a
that would be a
technician's test.
pure apprentice path, which the
Right.
legislature said we
So
can
I'm just,
never
yeah, I was
enforce.
just wondering.
Well,
The
We always,
legislature-
the legislature that said the state is so big and the saturation of inspectors and potential
Mhm.
sponsors is so small that it would really restrict new people coming in. So we were required to have a path without apprenticeship, and that was our fast track. And I think it's been a total failure in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
This is at least going to bring in some practical experience, do some inspections, and it reels in the hours. There's documentation out there. We require twice as many hours as a lot of states, and our scores are less than them. So we started with small hours, and then we went up.
Yeah.
And thinking that more hours is going to give us.
I didn't realize the legislature had said no the fast track has to be in there.
We have to have.
It had to provide a path.
A path
without apprenticeship.
So once we provided
I
the
didn't
path.
realize that was
That was
a directive.
We have an opportunity to circumvent that and get back to an apprentice program with this step.
We can enhance it, so we're not requiring them to go find
Even
a
though I'm
sponsor.
on it then.
Yeah, you're not going out and finding a sponsor. You're
Utilizing the schools.
integrating it
Right.
into the school, and it's not as much as the 25 hours as an apprentice, but it's in a school format, probably a little more condensed. And although it may not get the experience at 25, it's going to be more than the 0 they're getting right now.
And if you keep the the apprentice license type there, because there's the concern about unlicensed assistants and stuff. So that's essentially a licensed assistant. Nothing's to say you couldn't be apprenticing with somebody while you're doing this at the same time.
So we'll still have sponsors, we'll still have apprentices. And the apprentice is still going to have to take the national exam training if they want to go beyond an apprentice. Now, nothing says they can't stay an apprentice. You can stay an apprentice and just take your 32 hours of continuing ed and keep renewing. We all have the same continuing ed. If you're a real estate inspector and you want to maintain that, the plan is you can maintain that license. There's no additional burden on TREC, same 32 hours. It's kind of unusual, but all 3 licenses require the same continuing ed. So renewal. So we just, the plan would, we don't make any more new real estate inspectors.
Right.
We cut the hours down to something a little more reasonable with the expectation that the hours would move to more quality than quantity. Because right now, I can tell you some of my guys that went through it, man, without enough Red Bull or amphetamines, they couldn't stay up. Because the classes are so long and they're repetitive, and there are redundant classes. So once...
What are we talking as far as...
Prescribed.
AHDH, ADHD, yeah, ADHD pills.
What are we talking as far as the hours, the reduction in hours?
What we're looking at is for the, and we've discussed, so we initially were looking at 90. When I looked at the 2 modules, I think 110 hours is reasonable for the national area. So if you look at it, we've got 4 modules, basically. The first 2 are modeled after the national exams outline, which is Building Science 1 and 2. 40 hours is a week. It made sense you got 5 days and a week of training, and this is also to kind of promote, maybe the schools would have, there's still a lot of people that are going to do this distance education, but the school says, okay, we got a week class right here. And then the 3rd module is analyzing and finding reporting, how we're building off of the basic building blocks. And then the 4th one is the business side. That to me is important in everything. 10 hours a day.
Which isn't covered at all.
Which isn't covered, yeah. So I think that's 110 hours of training, and then you set for the national exam. This is nothing Texas.
Okay.
And then we go to the Texas module. Module 1, 20 hours, is basically an enhanced legal and ethics module. It's taking our 8-hour class, taking it to 20 hours.
Okay.
Let's go some more details. And then the 2nd module is 40 hours, which includes the 18 hours of practicum or
the 3 inspections.
The 3 inspections. Now that whole 40 can be in the field. This is hands-on. This is out there building from the national stuff that you retained that applies to us, and then the first 20 hours of Texas stuff specific, and then you're going to go apply that in the field to how we do things in Texas. And then we kind of allocated about 18 hours for doing 3 inspections. You sound like a long time, but
the 10 hours is going to be with a school field trip, right? The 10 hours of hands-on.
No. So
it doesn't have to be.
So there's
that's going to be sold.
This is the real thing here, which is 3 complete inspections that you do reports on, and then you get graded on and get feedback from somebody based on what the what
Now,
the
it's
report
3
is.
satisfactory ones. If you cannot put one out that you wouldn't give to your worst enemy buying a house, those 3 are, I mean, the idea is, and the challenge here is going to be providing something to the providers that they can use as a scale. What's considered a satisfactory report? So the idea is a minimum of 3. They may not, it may take 4, it may take 5.
So 3 of any age type house, so 3 brand new houses.
That is something we haven't detailed in there. is
Those
how-
details can be worked out in the rule.
But the idea, but the idea is to get them out there, because right now, they're not seeing any house and doing a report. So this is the basic outline of what we're looking at providing. So once you come from another state or you've graduated, this is basically graduate work. Whether, you know, you look at the national exam as a 2-year degree somewhere, and then you're getting your upper level credits is the Texas one. So it doesn't matter if you're transferring in from another state and you're going right to the Texas, or you're staying at the same campus and you're doing the upper level Texas module 2 and 3. That's kind of the vision.
So the goal being, by the time they ever get out on their own, they will have done at least 3 inspections with 3 reports that they have actually done.
That are to a satisfactory level. Yes. Which is something we don't require now.
And we don't have now.
And the other, and the recommendation, I just want to say, the other 3 topics here before you get to the practicum will also include some hands-on field work. It's not just, those are full inspections, but there's also stuff to do when you're talking about, structural system, electrical systems, and the other chemical
The idea,
systems.
you're 2-on-1 at this point.
So the same 40 hours that we currently have for ride-along now would still be 40 hours of hands-on training for Texas Module 2. All the other modules could be classroom or distance education, but this is going to be like the same 40 hours ride-along. Has to be hands-on.
How do we quantify acceptable versus not acceptable in those 3 inspections?
That's going to be a challenge that we have to put forward as a
Okay.
committee.
It would be
Just
interesting
'cause
to
we-
have a
that's
small
As long as we're thinking in those
review
terms, they're just-
committee.
okay.
Yeah, that's something that has to come out of subcommittee to committee, and working with some of the schools. How do you qualify? It's a qualifying.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
It's very subjective, and that's the hard part.
It is and it's not, because with a lot of, I'm not gonna say trade association, but you have to submit stuff.
You do.
There's a
And it has to
protocol
be
out
approved.
there with Ashley.
Ashley.
Oh, I wasn't gonna play that, but.
Well, you have to submit, well,
But I mean, there
they
is,
have
so,
all that-
so this is not a first-time thing. We're not the
But
first.
don't sponsors have to look at, before they sign off on reports,
Yes.
have to determine whether they're
Yeah, they're
satisfactory?
supposed to. Yeah, supposed to.
Well, I think it says you have to randomly or.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that there is that
Yeah.
skill
And
set to determine what's an
on the real
acceptable
estate
report
side,
and what's
the
not.
sponsoring on the apprentice, you have to.
So,
everything.
but from someone who does that, my standard is probably a lot different than yours or some of the others. So the question is, we have to actually put in a system that this is where it would be.
I would think you would need not just a single person grading all 3 reports, but 3 people, 3 veteran inspectors grading that report, and then 3 others doing that report.
And that would
So
be
you have a
guidance that we
consensus.
could provide to the, I mean, some of the providers would have the staff to do that, some might not, but that would be in the weeds when it
In-
comes
in
down
the
to
weeds.
creating that.
So is it possible to do this training of these modules and stuff if you're a company and you have guys coming up through a normal apprenticeship?
Yeah,
not-
so the question is, how do you integrate somebody who does want to be an apprentice? They're still going to do the national stuff.
Right.
If the intent is that for that apprentice to get their license,
Yeah,
if they're not going to get their license, they don't need to do
but if
anything.
they're gonna go get their license,
So they still have to do
right?
the national, and where they can take advantage of this is, this can be done if their sponsor is a ride-along inspector or an instructor. They can do this 20 hours, 18 hours, at least the 18 hours
In-house?
in-house. And that way,
And then the
you're,
40 hours would go to
that
the
way,
school?
that way, if you've got somebody that's coming in and you've already predetermined, when you graduate and get your license, you're gonna come work for me. Well, maybe I have a little more influence on how they're gonna be rather than somebody else is teaching you to drive. Now I gotta teach you a little bit more, but you have the ability, if they're going the apprentice path, that you're the one that's molding their, the final touches.
And we had talked in the subcommittee meeting about looking at a way to have experience as an apprentice under somebody go towards whatever this Module 2's experience is.
And I think we need to.
Yeah.
I sponsor apprentices.
No,
And I promise you, by the time my apprentice is ready, they're going to be able to write reports.
Right. So I think that that's something you go, if the committee's good with this kind of thing, that's something as we progress and start looking at the actual rule making.
And being the sponsor there, you could, I mean, part of you would be taking on is you're going to ensure that they do 3 inspections, and I think that we're going to be way beyond that.
Yeah. It's just this the concept here, and one of the things breaking it up in 2, not only does it help with reciprocity, but it also specifically addresses sunset recommendation that we align with the national exam.
Right.
You've got these modules that do that. The first part of it absolutely does that. That's what its goal is.
We've had the highest number of hours of any state for a long time, and obviously
by a lot.
Yeah,
and it's not working.
Right, and it's evidenced by the pass rates that we're seeing, and by we've all seen some of the new inspectors that have come out. I'm granted, there's some good ones, but there's a lot that they get out and they really are unsure as to what they're supposed to be doing.
They learned the national and the state all together, and it's confused in their head. And I see them doing reports, and they're using InterNACHI standards, and they're using this, and they're confused.
I mean, they just don't have
This
any
is going to
field
separate
experience.
everything.
That's the problem.
This will
They've
separate
never seen
it.
a house.
And when you're trying to compare, well, how does this training compare to the others? Actually, what you would compare is the 110 hours to do the national exam. How does that compare to the other states? This is about middle of the road.
Yeah.
Is
I think
this
this is
layout
a good
available
solution for what we've been
on a
charged to
website?
do.
I think it's absolutely
It's part of our
worth it.
materials.
Well, the other thing that we're looking at.
Without the
is
hours,
Steve had talked about that,
but
is cleaning
the
up
outline
some
is
of
part of the
verbiage
materials.
It'll be adjusted
for the
and posted
exceptions
where I can download.
for
I can
engineers,
send it to
people
everybody.
coming in,
Yeah.
other education that qualify.
Right.
There's a whole laundry list of stuff for staff to look at for licensing that we need to delete.
Experience
And just
exceptions.
make it straight here.
I think we have the potential of dropping all the other 1%ers.
Which carry on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I want to do is kind of focus what we need today to go forward to the commission. So obviously we, at the commission meeting, we have to address the sunset items. Where are we? What are we doing? One of the big ones for this committee is the education, and streamlining it. And I think the subcommittee is all on board with this proposal, as staff is. All of the staff, education, staff licenses, staff, Tony and I think it's a great, excellent idea. But what we need to do is move it forward to the commission. So if this body thinks it's a good idea, we just need kind of this general plan. And then all of these details can be worked out by rule, because what we're gonna do is suggest that the legislature approve some changes to 1102 that would incorporate this. For instance, one of the sections would say you can set the hours for these programs without naming them out, just between 130 hours and 180 hours. So as it evolves, you can shift it a little bit if you need to. Classroom hours or course hours will include classroom, practicums, and fieldwork, so that by rule it can be designed the way that y'all think fits best. And this is a great start, and it may be all that ever needs to be done. But all the details, and they're all good questions, and there's lots of detail, can take place afterwards. And there'll be a lead time, 6 to 9 months, to get all of this done. But the legislature's in session now, and the commission meeting's in February. So the real purpose today is, do y'all agree that this is a good idea to move forward and see what we can do?
Well, before we move forward with that, I don't want to make the same mistake I did on the last agenda. I want to give the 3 people an opportunity to speak on these, and I'll go ahead and start with Mr. Harbuck.
Yes, I'll dispense with some of the details. I went through them in the Education Committee. It is in that form, basically home inspections are a visual inspection and video is visual. And the bulk of an inspection is visual. We're concerned, I don't want to downplay the fact that the people that are harmed by a strictly live, only in-person, on-site type education are active military and people that work full-time jobs, because it's difficult to schedule live training in those circumstances, as well as rural Texans. You know, legislature's already addressed that.
Let me interrupt you for just a minute about that, because when the military get ready to retire or change careers, they have a 6-month period that they're paid by the military to go out and train 4 days a week and on the weekend.
Right.
So that doesn't hold a lot of merit with me.
Well,
they have the ability.
They have that ability.
They have
That's
to
an
get
option.
approved by
Yeah.
the chain of command.
Yeah, at the end of their career, but I'm talking about those that are in the middle of their career, not those.
Well, if they're in the middle of their career, quite frankly, they're subject to deployment or transfer to a different state. So that's not the ones we really need to be talking about. We need to talk about the ones that are retiring or ending their career in Texas.
So certainly full-time job holders are the others that are affected by this, and makes it challenging. So some of the things that actually came up during the Education Committee, I'll try to emphasize this instead of what's in the text of what I've sent you already, had to do with getting sort of practiced at doing inspections. You know, that's part of what this is about. So what I would suggest you and ask you to consider is that what if you had 18 hours as an alternate requirement, 18 hours of video inspection with review, and then after that you actually have them go out and do an inspection on their own home, a friend's home, something like that. Because I do believe that there's a benefit to doing those inspections themselves from the standpoint of time. You know, somebody mentioned, you know, somebody went out and did a home inspection, probably one of their first ones, it took them 8 hours to do it. Well, you don't want to be doing that to a consumer and the other people involved in the transaction. You want to be sort of in a situation where you can kind of get through that faster than that. So I would ask you to consider an alternate here. You know, make it 1 or 2 additional inspections on their own after they do 18 hours of video. And then that way they do get that and they can get up to snuff and be able to do it in time, you see. So, and I don't know, what do you think about that?
Me personally, I'm not a big fan of the video. I think that although I understand your position that the majority of inspection is visual, I think the majority of what you're learning is the interaction. It's the instinct. It's the hands-on. It's physically going, looking at an electrical panel and putting your hand on it and feeling that one breaker is substantially hotter than the other, or there's a weird sound coming out of it. I mean, there's all these little things that you just can't pick up in video. And I think trying to, with what the Education Subcommittee is really trying to do, which is really increase the quality of the inspector and their knowledge base that's behind them so that they can physically go out completely and totally on their own and have some level of confidence, substantially more than what people have now. I think it's really what the directive is, and I think what they're trying to accomplish. And me personally, I don't think video really does that. I know that when I first started, when I went on my first 2 or 3 inspections, I was scared out of my gourd. I had no idea. I paid another inspector to come out and follow after I was done to make sure I did everything right. But I took that upon myself to pay that. But the current path doesn't help with that. And I think that's right. And I think that's the direction that the Education Subcommittee is trying to go. And I think if we start scaling that back to allowing video, I think that could actually hurt more than it would help. But that's my personal opinion.
And just to add to that, the last time this was brought up to the legislature, they authorized the commission to do up to 40 hours of field work, and they recognized the need to find a balance of both, but the need for hands-on experience, because they were hearing a lot of stories about the first time someone went out to do an inspection, or the first time they'd never done anything else. So they said, okay, well, we understand it's a big state, there are issues with rural license holders and everything else, but 40 hours, you know,
right.
So.
And that would resolve that issue if you had them go out and do the inspections. That's what they were doing.
Well, and I think the 18-hour practicum isn't for consumers.
Right.
It's in the classroom setting. So it's not, you're not telling them to go out and do the inspections, 3 inspections for consumers.
No. What I'm saying is that after they do the 18 hours of video, then they go and do an inspection on their own home and an inspection on a friend.
They still haven't
But
There's
there's
still
nobody
no
to
face- there's no-
oversee, there's nobody to give them guidance.
Right.
If it's a
No mentor.
video, for instance, if I was watching a video of a home inspection, I feel like I'm not the one aiming the camera. So I don't know if what is in the lens of that camera is everything that I should be seeing. I don't know. When you walk around a house, you look up, you look down, you know, you look at the neighbors' houses sometimes to see patterns of roofing issues or drainage issues or things like that. And I feel like by doing a video, by restricting it to a video and not being able to actually put your hands on, you're being restricted by what that person chose to film. And it's, I would not ever want to inspect a house and be responsible for it if somebody sent me a video of it. I would, it's like doing a drive-by to some extent. You're assuming that it's a 1970s house, it probably has this, this, and this, but I just don't know how comprehensive, in my opinion, a video could possibly be, because it's totally based on whoever's filming it. And I just recently took a photography course where I was like, boy, I wish somebody could actually show me how to use my camera instead of the Nikon they had in their hand, you know, because it was a different camera. And it was instructive, but it wasn't enough for me to feel like I got all the details I needed to accomplish what I was trying to accomplish.
Well, that's the idea with video. You videotape it until you're done. You look at everything that an inspector would look at, so nothing's left out. That's the point, you know.
Well, I think the goal here was we've
That's
talked
not what
about.
we're really talking about right this point.
And we've talked about for years trying to get us. We all wanted to talk about a possible sponsorship or forced sponsorship to physically get some interaction. I think this is probably the closest path we can get within our legislative boundaries to be able to do that.
You know, short of just mandating
Right.
apprenticeship.
Exactly.
Right.
Or
Which we know isn't
probationary
gonna happen.
license that says, okay, you graduate, you go do some inspections with a temporary sponsor for a while until he says you're good.
Okay.
We'll build it into the school.
Even then, if you're grading, if you're looking at an inspector, let's say I went and did my neighbor's house. Another inspector went with me, I'm new, I go look at my neighbor's house. Well, who's to know whether I missed anything if you're simply looking at a report that I wrote about my neighbor's house? You know,
Right. Well, by then, they've already done 18 hours of video inspection. We've already been able to check that.
But you still don't know. You still don't know on that one. At least with this one, more than likely the schools are going to be in a house where they've inspected before. They already know what you should and should not be finding.
Right.
And that's what they're going to do. It's like, you missed that. Don't forget about
Well,
this.
yeah.
And that type of stuff. And you can't do that if you just watch 18 hours video and then let them go out on their own.
maybe I'm misunderstanding the video. Let's say as a provider, you're providing the video of the house for them to learn from.
Yeah.
Okay, they're not going around doing the home inspection and taking a video of what
No,
they're
this
inspecting.
is,
they're watching the video.
This is
Okay,
video
that's-
training by the provider,
Okay,
nothing
that's,
involved.
I just want to make sure I understand.
The student is going through with the same view basically as the home inspector has doing the inspection, watching them, test outlets and so forth in the process. And then they're deciding whether or not, there's a defect there or not, you see. So it's not, it takes meticulousness, I agree, to make sure that you're doing everything, all the standards, and that you're showing them everything. But, once you do it, then it's consistent. And, the standards of practice for that home are consistent for everybody that watches it. And once again, they can replay it and so forth too.
Right.
But, this issue of, the idea is the time frame. So nobody wants to go out and do their first 3 inspections and have it take 8 and then 6 and then 4 hours to do those. And that's what, I sound like some of the concerns of the Education Subcommittee were that. And I think this might be an alternative to be able to let them do that. They would have already gone through and done that video that I described to you. And if they didn't catch enough, make it a 50%, whatever you end up coming up with for a rule as far as what passing is. And if they've done those videos to that adequacy, then then after that, it's not so much expertise anymore. It's that, we don't want to send these people out on their first consumer inspection and have it take 6 to 8 hours. That's the key. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Any other people? Mr. Regan? No? Okay. Mr. Marlowe? Okay. Anybody else?
Any other votes?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
State your name,
Senator,
please.
I contract with AHIT. We are field instructors.
And so I kind of take exception to what we've heard a number of times today, that there aren't any schools in Texas providing the field education. We do that.
I don't know if we said that.
I don't think that was ever said. I recall that ever being said.
I kept hearing that.
The question is, we don't
required.
mandate.
Anyway, I've trained over 300 students, so these are pre-licensed students. One of the things that, whether you go with video or on the site, one of the things that I would be concerned about is with most of the students, if you're going to let them take a panel cover off, you need to be standing there and watching and supervising and making sure that they're safe, making sure they know how to do it, making sure they don't stick their finger inside the box. Yeah, I've got many of them going,
And that's, those are some of the important things that we think should happen before they get their license.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Get
So,
shocked.
Yeah.
And they're not, I don't know that they're all getting practice at doing that, and the first one they open up may be the first one they're hired to do.
Right. So I do think hands-on, face-to-face, person-to-person instruction is extremely important, even if you do go with part video. Because some of the equipment in homes, when you are actually at a residence and you are watching them do that, they can tear up some HVAC equipment. They can, if the toilet's not loose after 30 students, it'll be loose. That kind of thing. So I do have a question, and I may be out of order. But I wonder if I could reserve a time later for a specific question that I forgot to ask earlier.
Is it referenced this
No,
subject?
not to this, no.
Sure.
It is in reference to 535.206,
Yeah,
Inspector Advisory Committee.
Get with us at the end. We all don't rush out of here as soon as it's over.
No, I do.
Well,
All right, so with that in mind, and still on item B. Yes, sir.
Just, you know, that's part of the training in the video too, is that, you know, we warn them to not do that when the inspector's inspecting. You know, it's not, you know, we don't stick our fingers in here, this is electrified and so forth. It can be done just as easily, okay? So, and I think if you want the inspector there, I mean, these are things that you can bear out in your rules as you develop them, obviously, down the road, but you know, it is a good point. If they are doing it live and it's their first one, they haven't seen somebody else do it before, they don't know, they haven't been warned to not put their finger in there. You do need to have one instructor at the electrical panel box. Maybe you need one instructor at the thermostat if he hasn't been warned or she hasn't been warned to not turn that on if the temperature is not right outside and so forth. So I know you'll work that out, but I realize that you know, you don't have a lot of time in these meetings to go into all the detail, but is there some way I might ask for like a list of the documentation that you have come up with that suggests that it can only be live and it can't be through an alternative like video?
Well, I would invite you to come to the next education subcommittee meeting. And
He was at it.
Right, but I mean, you guys are going to have another.
I don't know that we have a list of supporting document that says hands-on is preferred over video. I think it's just the opinion of everybody's been tasked with coming up with a better program. I mean, when the Fast Track came around, it basically abandoned all hands-on and apprenticing, and that's where the quality of the inspectors started declining.
And you have some statistics on how it declined, or I mean, that's all I'm interested in.
I don't know of any statistics or documentation. I think it's just the experience of the people that were actually doing inspections and watching new inspectors come through on that fast track.
All fast track inspectors are not bad inspectors. That's
Absolutely.
never been said.
Absolutely.
You know, there's some good ones. But the quality of inspections in general with fast track has gone down. The quality of inspectors with fast track has gone down, evidenced by the schools and the pass rates.
And I don't think it's intentional.
No,
I think
it's just the circumstances.
the idea of fast tracking, the inspectors lack the training to do some of these things, because it's limited what you can do in a two-dimensional screen versus being there.
Well, when it comes to learning and education, people are driven by different aspects of it. Some do better looking at words on a page and seeing pictures. Some do better handling the three-dimensional object. There's all kinds of different, 3 primary ways. I don't know what they are. But video could be one of them. But we have to look at something that's going to be consistent in our suggestions to the committee, from the subcommittee to the committee up to the commission. And that can be considered, but it's got to be vetted out a little more.
Thank you.
And keep in mind that of the 170 hours that the subcommittee currently is proposing, 130 of those can be done by video or by distance education. It's just the 40 hours requirement for the Texas Module 2, which is the same as the existing 40-hour ride-along that we have today. So we're really not changing the hands-on standard at all, just the structure of it.
The structure of it, the required report.
Yeah, required the report.
And that could be done by the ride-along inspector.
Right.
Yes, as well as the schools.
Right.
Or do you have anything you wanted to kind of throw in on this that's kind of your neck of the woods? No. Okay.
You like what we're doing?
You're awfully quiet.
I was starting to get scared there.
No, the direction you're heading is fine. Like I told the subcommittee, I think it's great. So I think we're on the right track.
Okay.
And we can handle whatever it is you're about to propose. But it fits nicely in the wheelhouse of work.
So is that the consensus of the committee that we think the subcommittee's on the right track here?
So is this something we can
I'll
provide?
make a motion that this committee adopt the proposal from our education requirements to be between 130 and 180
I
hours.
don't think we can do that because that's technically not on the agenda, right?
It is. That's what this agenda
Well, I mean,
item is.
but what you guys did was literally just a couple hours ago.
Yeah, but it
No,
fits
it was already
within,
on agenda
it
item.
fits within the agenda, it's agenda item, it fits within that agenda, because they discussed it under the exact same agenda item on the subcommittee.
Right.
So it's it is definitely within that.
So if the motion is that you accept that the plan established by the subcommittee be moved forward to the commission for consideration as addressing the legislative item that Sunset required from this group, then.
Do we need a range on the hours or just a maximum?
The range, I think the range was put in with a maximum of 180, but a minimum of 130, so that in the future, we don't go below that, because there is a certain minimum education that's going to be required, and we need that range so that we can put in the suggested language in the legislation to take to Sunset or whoever the bill sponsor is going to be, so that it can get moved forward. And as we did discuss in the subcommittee, Tony didn't mention this, I'll mention it. If the legislature does not approve the plan to streamline not just the education, but the license types and get rid of that middle license type, which is not used very much, we can still do this education plan for the fast track with a little adjustment. So I think we're on the right track either way we go. It's just while we've got the legislative session up and eyes on us because of the Sunset report, it's a good time to clean up our statute as well.
All right, so you had to,
I made the motion.
Just kind of as presented?
As presented.
What she said.
Just say so moved.
So moved.
motion is made, do I hear a second?
Second?
Second. Any other discussion? Barbara, do you have any input you'd like to provide?
I vote yes.
All right, no more discussion, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion passes. Item number 11, discussion and possible action regarding the requirement that inspection reports be provided to the client within 3 days, even when the client has yet to pay the inspector.
Horrible idea.
That has been a requirement since we started.
I think that is basically saying that if anybody knew this rule, that they could get inspection services for free, and I don't work for free, and I have a problem with this because I get the 3 days rule, but I don't see why I can't walk out of HEB with my groceries and not have to pay for 3 days, or not have to pay it off.
So what we have to do is we'll all be required to require a credit card authorization
No, you
in order
just don't
to
give them the
move
report
forward.
if they don't pay you.
No,
Well,
Wait, wait, wait,
it
wait.
breaches the statute.
I think
Right.
I think that's the
Fix
issue.
the
Is the statute
statute.
doesn't say that they have to pay for it. The statute says you have to have the report within 3 days.
But the statute does not
Doesn't
protect,
care if you have to
protect
deliver it.
inspectors
Doesn't matter
from
if
making
you're
a
doing it for
living.
free.
It's interpretation of the statute. that gets us in trouble.
But in the rule, it also states, unless otherwise agreed to in writing by the
And
client.
that's what I had my attorney, is that
That's
modify
where, that's
agreement.
where you
You
solve
can
that
put it
problem.
in your report, or put it in your agreement.
That's what I put
But I
mine.
can, yeah, I can, so the statute says I can modify.
You
my
can tell- you can
agreement
tell
to
your
say-
Unless
lawyer-
otherwise agreed to in writing by the client. It is
You just put
specifically
it
in
in
the
your,
statute.
I can send you
So
all.
if
Well,
you-
why does the statute say that at all?
It's
Is what
a
I'm-
It's not
rule,
the
it's not the
statute, it's
statute,
a
it's
rule.
by
It's
rule.
a rule. Why
Because
does-
they
They want you to provide the report.
It's not about delivering the report, it's about not getting paid.
But I think the original
But
intent
the original
was,
intent, if they want to deliver it.
Yeah.
They go to
well,
the
it's
court
just been clarification. that
and
has to
spend
be-
a week
So,
or 10 days.
so the question is, I deliver the report, I tell them, for instance, I use HomeGauge software. My report gets uploaded for them to log in and view. They can't log in and view it unless they've paid. I've delivered it, technically, it's ready. If they don't pay it,
There's no access
they
to it.
can't have it.
Yeah, but
Open it, it's not
if you recall,
delivered.
if you recall at the last committee meeting, the head of the enforcement division said that that would not be considered
Right.
delivery.
Right. They have to have
Delivery
access
is,
to
If
the
they can't
information.
open it, that's
They
not.
would
delivered.
have access if they paid for it.
But that's the problem.
But that's a
And if you
business
give it to
decision.
them and ask for
That's a-
payment
feeling
later
is
where they have
okay.
full
That's
access
a
to
business
it,
But you can put that in your
the
contract.
chances of getting
Right.
paid are very much diminished.
Just put it in your agreement, it's taken care of.
There's very few places that'll
Then
let
the
you
only
take the
recourse
groceries
is,
home and then pay for them 3
That's
days
what I'm
Small
later.
claims
saying.
court.
That's
So
what
that's
I'm
what
saying.
you
Well,
at
you
the point
just
of
don't
service.
deliver
So that's
it.
just it. You get it in writing that they know that they have to pay for the report in order to receive the
My
report.
Before
agreement
you
now
eat it.
is to
What
clarify
happens
every
if you go to
section.
closing?
Sean's
Okay,
got
I've
the-
agreed to go to closing and then they don't pay you because of course something falls through all the time and people don't get paid. That's an agreement.
Sean can
that's
surmise
done.
this very
Yeah, I notified my
succinctly.
attorney about this after our last meeting. He just added into our agreement that per our agreement, the report will not be delivered until it's paid for.
Okay.
And once they sign that, which is before the inspection, I don't have to deliver it.
And that's good.
Because they've already
That's
agreed.
otherwise
Yeah, you're
agreed to
covered.
in writing by the
Okay,
client.
all right, well then.
You could just collect it before the inspection.
Well,
can I,
Okay, yes.
I understand you can fix it by agreement, but if this is an issue, we could, it's just by rule.
Just clarify.
We can
Yeah,
clarify
I
it by
just-
rule.
I would feel better if we clarify the rule to say,
Me
to say that.
too.
I would feel better
because-
from a consumer protection point of view because
Yeah.
you don't know. I'm not saying everyone's, but you don't know if there's inspectors out there that put things in their report or their contract that someone signs and they don't look at. So there is some meaning to agreed in writing.
all you gotta do is change it to 3 days after payment's tendered.
A lot of these are you doing within a few days that they need to have. I mean, the whole purpose was to inform them so they can make a decision on completing the contract.
Right, everybody's got a time frame. Usually
Yeah.
it's 7 to 10 days option period, and they want to get this.
They want to call you the last day of their option period to tell you that, whoops, I forgot, so now I have to hurry up and get you out there
Do
today.
you know anybody who takes 3 days to generate and deliver a report?
I do. I know people that do it. I don't agree with them, but I know people that do
I
it.
do too, and
This
sometimes,
doesn't apply if they're
sometimes
not
it's a
paid.
lack of being able to get in touch with somebody to, just saying if you deliver it by email, but you don't know that they read it, so.
Well, that's okay.
That's okay.
delivery. That's
It's
delivery.
considered, I don't know.
As
what
long
if,
as
you
it's
know.
not locked by password or some other
Right.
process, that is a delivery option.
Okay.
So what is the practice for all of y'all now? How do you get paid? Do
I
you
get
get
credit
paid
card.
before you deliver it?
I get at the time of the inspection. When I'm doing the walkthrough with them,
That's
when they
been
pay.
my
But
experience.
if they don't show up, which
Well-
I have a lot of, if I have out of state,
I do a phone walkthrough over the phone.
If the
Yeah.
client's going to be at the inspection, they can bring a check or cash, or they can bring a credit card. If they do a credit card, I refer them back to the link that allows them to pay it online.
Everybody does it
If they don't plan on being there, they have to secure authorization of that credit card at the time they do the inspection, or they get a reminder to accomplish that, or I'll send them out something manually.
Everybody does it differently.
If they don't,
The last one.
the authorization,
Reloads or something?
the authorization is scheduled to capture the funds 3 hours after the inspection is completed. That's my suggestion.
The last one I did, it was a prepaid, it was
But
in
if I've got
2004.
out of state.
Yeah.
All right, before we get
So you-
too far, before we get too far,
Everything is
let
prepaid
me get
for
some
the
comments
last
from
15
people who signed up. Start with Mike.
Mike Carlo again. The biggest issue, or one way to fix this, make it mandatory that if a real estate agent is forwarded one of our bills, they must present it to title.
Why would you say, oh, you're talking about for if it's a closing?
But what if they break out the deal?
But then they
Todd's
put
company
down
will not-
earnest money and our fee can come out of that.
Yeah, see, that's not in the contract.
Sometimes those checks
That's
are
not
back.
in the
The
contract.
contingency related.
Right.
Yeah,
They are
that-
not obligated to
That's-
release the funds.
That's right.
I promise.
That's
I
right.
know.
This is the
That's
But
It's
the
contingent
issue I'm
on the
having,
reporting
and
of
I,
findings or predetermined.
the issue I've had, and I've actually got a complaint over here right now,
Yeah.
is that realtors won't even forward the bill to the title company because they don't want to tie up that money.
And I agree.
Right.
And, but it
You
should
put that
be
right there for
mandatory that if they are presented a bill by a, what's the term we were talking about, a service provider through
Inspection
Westfield.
shall. Inspection
Then
shall.
it has to be presented to title.
Or you could say.
If you don't present
You don't
any
present
type
any
of
color.
I can
Pays
find
for
out
fees
the title
paid and they
is.
never
Oh,
present.
yeah.
Well, I'd like,
If I do it,
Or
I'll-
breaking it.
I'll-
I don't do that anymore.
It's not a.
I stopped doing
I've
it
had
as
to
well.
do it a few
Well, the other
times,
problem
and when I
is-
do 203Ks, different,
required to
totally
be
different thing,
outside by
I,
insurance.
that's how I get paid, is through title.
That's a different program.
Yeah, but if I have someone walk on an
Right.
inspection
Right.
report
It's hard,
fee,
hard to just say the fee.
I need that backup that, okay, even if the house doesn't close, there's still money sitting over there.
What's the adjournment
But I don't have-
before the inspection?
For me?
It's just a business decision.
I just prefer to provide the service.
Well, if you tell them. like-
I don't give them the report,
like
that's
my-
part of the service.
Like my office, you know,
Still
you gotta
do.
be paid the day before. If payment's not there, we don't go inspect. I mean, it's kinda
I'm
like
getting ready- I was
Amazon.
getting
If
ready
I
to
don't
do
give
that.
them my credit card, they're not shipping anything.
Because
Yeah.
it's the inspection shall, so you can do the inspection.
Got it.
and then get
Okay.
paid and then prepare
This
the
comes
report.
from an attorney, real estate attorney, and a contract. Delivery, it's saying we must, within 3 days. You can have anything in your agreement, but it says written by the client. That's where we're being kind of screwed out of this.
I would say written by the client.
It is
Agreed in writing.
Agreed in writing, so if they sign the contract, that's agreeing in writing.
Not in legal.
That's what that says.
Because that's my
Agreed in writing by the
not their
contract is
agreement.
execution
If
of an
they
agreement.
signed that contract.
Their
they
agreement, I
agreed.
understand, but it will come
Yeah.
back in both ways.
Well, you know, you're talking,
Well, anything
well, I mean,
can,
Right, well, let's
one here.
Well, we
That's just
can,
from.
Hang on, let's.
Contract. That's a real estate contract attorney.
Right.
I paid $450 for this information. Delivery, but it says written by the client. We wrote the agreement.
What
It's
says-
our agreement, it's our company agreement, not the client's
Doesn't say
agreement.
written.
it could probably,
In writing.
agreed in writing by the client.
I understand, but where the whole thing comes
You
down
could, you
to,
could interpret, I'm a real estate
Right.
contract attorney, I did that for 30 years.
it goes
but-
both ways.
It goes both
and
ways,
they-
but we can make this more clear.
That's what
We
I'm
can,
agreeing
we
with. That's what we
can
need to do. It has to
revise
have a
this
little
rule,
clarification.
we can make that more clear,
So
we
let's-
can put
yeah.
something in that says that you don't have to prepare the report or deliver the report unless you've been paid.
Right.
With
I
these
think that's all I.
Yeah, I think
that's
if
all
we
I-
do that, I think that clears up everybody's.
But I do think if you've been paid, you have to meet some time
I
frame.
agree.
Absolutely.
I would say 48
I'm
hours,
just
3
saying,
days.
I think,
both ways.
I think it's a fairly easy fix, but
So
I would recommend doing that as opposed to just relying on the contracts to do that. I think that would be clearer and it would provide everybody an understanding of what this
So
meant.
if you do hold it for ransom, and they've got 3 days to pay the ransom, and then they pay you on the third day,
The report
do you
is-
have more time now to get it?
Yeah.
So if they pay you an hour before the end of the third day, you better hit that button and send right
Right.
there.
You better have done it already.
System
Well, I mean,
already.
it just
Well, no, I
depends how
think
you
the
can.
I think the 3 days would be contingent on the payment. It wouldn't be
Yes.
3 days after the inspection
You
report.
do
It'd
it
be
just
3
like,
days.
just like leasing, property management, you do leasing. When somebody
Because
comes out and they
otherwise
want their
it's too-
security deposit.
Okay, well, then
it's
maybe
30
you make
days.
it 2 days after the payment,
Yeah.
It should be less.
if you're gonna do after the payment, it needs to be less.
Because it needs to be contingent on that, because otherwise, I don't know how you, then
But
you're.
if you prepay, then I've got
Then
2
you better
days to
hurry
do the
up.
report,
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
which is
Yes.
fine.
Yes.
I mean.
Well, that's the balance
Is there a
we've got to
problem with
strike.
What if they prepay 2 days ahead of time?
Mine prepay weeks.
You still haven't executed that.
So the question,
We could say 2 days from the inspection, how about
I
that?
think
If
you
paid.
pay the
2 days from the service or payment, whichever is later.
There you go.
Exactly. Thank you.
No, but I'll work on it.
Well, we'll draft something and
Okay.
bring
Bring it back to
something
the
to the
next
next committee
Okay.
meeting.
The only monkey wrench in this is who's releasing reports without agreement signed.
I do.
No, you're not
Sometimes
required to
I
have an
do.
agreement.
Not required to have an agreement.
But your insurance most of the time is
Well,
required.
if
But
I
my
was
insurance
to
doesn't- my insurance
without
doesn't
an
require it.
agreement, it'll say
You
that
don't require
by
signing
the
an
fact that I
agreement?
did the inspection,
Never have.
they know.
Now, they ask you if you do that.
Yeah.
So we'll bring it.
They ask you on that
Lee, we'll
renewal
bring it to the
contract.
next
Bring it to the
committee
next
meeting.
meeting.
Yeah.
So is this,
I don't do
is
it
this
often.
just a
I don't
full
do it
committee
often.
discussion, or this wouldn't be really?
All right, so just
No,
to,
we'll just bring it back to the full
Yeah, I think we
committee.
have a
This is a real
so just to
simple.
round that out, everybody's in agreement that that's pretty much the better way to go. So
What's the agreement?
the inspection has, the report has to be
Uh,
delivered within 2
the
days
date of the
after payment,
inspection,
or the service has been
payment for
performed,
the
whichever is later.
Well, Carrie's going to
Something
draft.
to that effect.
Yeah.
Draft.
Draft a suggestion.
She'll draft
for
it,
us to review.
but it'll come up for our next meeting.
Adding an either or in there with
Yeah,
this.
she got that.
Yeah, I've got something similar to like 2 days from the latter of the date of the inspection or payment for the inspection.
Yeah.
Something like that. So we'll work
So
on
we're taking,
fitting it in.
ultimately, we could take a day off of the now providing these. I
Take a
think
day
there's
off.
a day off of the 3 days from the 2.
If you did it on Friday afternoon, you got to deliver it by
By
Sunday.
Monday. Monday.
Well, that's where the 3-day came up. Do it on Friday. You
Business
got
Right.
till Monday.
That's why we had 3 days in it.
Well, you want me to put business days?
No. You still
Okay.
got the clock's still ticking on the outside.
Well, and the
What do
reason
you-
is the
What do you consider
contract.
business day?
Yeah.
All right, let's let this come back at the next meeting. We can hash out the.
The details. So we'll have
This
some
is
language
taken-
and you can decide to as
I think 2 days should be
Business days
fine.
are Monday through Friday.
Okay. All right, item number 12, discussion of possible action regarding awarding CE for attending any meeting of the full inspectors meeting.
That was,
What did I say?
you specifically asked if
That's
we,
for visitors, not committee members.
So right now, we get it for February only. You're saying for any committee?
That's our payment.
You know, we are volunteering our time and we're learning a lot about what we do.
Are you talking just for us or people?
Everybody.
well,
Everyone.
here's the thing you've got to weigh is, and I'm not saying these aren't valuable meetings, but to the extent that CE is meaningful, directing what you do on a regular
If
basis,
you got
learning
enough
things.
CEs to renew your license by sitting here instead of learning.
Well, there would still have to be a limit on the, like, for instance, for real estate license holder, it's 4 hours.
Is a max.
Up to 4 hours for attending
We have
the
a max
February
here, right?
commission meeting.
2.
Yeah.
I think it's
It needs to
2.
be a max number of hours.
There's got to
per
be a max
meeting.
number of hours,
But
no, total.
Total and per
Yeah.
meeting. So if this
No,
went 4
that's right.
hours.
It needs to be per meeting, because right now, in there, it currently just says up to 4 hours for a renewal period. It doesn't say 2 per year.
Right, so you could do 4 hours for a renewal. So if you came to this meeting and sat here for 4 hours, let's say it lasted 4 hours.
That'd help us.
Hopefully not. But then you could get 4 hours, but if you came to any other meetings within your renewal period, you couldn't get credit for it.
Well, I'll tell you, I learn more in these meetings
Yeah.
than I learn in my CE classes. After you've done this for a
Just
while,
means you'll be
10 years or
miserable.
so,
Sure.
you really are just reviewing those
Yeah.
courses,
Yeah.
Right.
answering the same questions you already have answered.
I agree.
I just think, again, not a problem with the concept, just a balance in terms of having it be meaningful, so someone can't earn all of their CE by sitting into these meetings. Again, not
You
that
can't get
these aren't
32 hours
valuable.
in 2 years.
No way,
either.
yeah, we don't spend that much time together.
I still think up to 4 is
Be
perfectly
full
fine.
committee,
agree.
not subcommittee.
Per renewal.
Up to
Full
four.
committee only,
Full
not subcommittee.
committee,
Right.
yes, sir.
Yeah, yeah.
I have a
Up to 4 per year for full committee attendance.
I think that this, I didn't realize we were going on the 4 per year. I think my interest in this is for attending any meeting, meaning that it doesn't have to be just the February. I'm not saying somebody comes to every meeting and gets 2 every meeting, 2 hours. I was thinking that it doesn't have, this February meeting doesn't have to be the once a year
Right.
meeting that person
Right.
comes to.
Right.
Right.
Only because there's
See-
more interesting meetings sometimes for some people because
Right.
it has specific items that will encourage them to come to a meeting.
Now, there is,
More so than February.
there is the issue of having to have staff here at every meeting to do the,
You got to see, you got a deputy
And also,
administrator.
if you're doing it throughout the year, we have to look to see, okay, is this their license period? Have they already been to the meeting? Have they already gotten hours?
So
They
there's
can't
some
get hours
logistics to it.
prescribed?
Well, what's the difference in doing that as to whether we're taking classes through
You
schools?
may not count
and
for your
submitting
renewal, but you still go
certificates?
on your record.
This shows up on our.
I mean, everything I take goes there and doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily all go.
So,
there.
can I make a recommendation? If that's something you guys want to move forward with, then we have staff do, run the traps to make sure we've got all of our ducks in a row. I'm throwing a bunch of
Options.
metaphors out here. And then bring something back to you guys and say, okay, this is the easiest way to implement this. This makes the most sense. This is the least stressful in terms of staffing, as well as something we can do programmatically so that we're not having to do a bunch of manual work to enter this stuff. I mean, if you guys are okay with that, then we can move forward and bring something to the next meeting that we've, ironed some of this stuff out.
Just think of the 32 hours. We're doing 8 hours MCE, so that's down to 24. How many of those 24
Where you got
do you
8%
want?
for SOP as well.
Right, that's what brings it
That's
down
8.
to 24.
Yeah, so you got 8 hours MCE. So you got 24 hours. Of the 24 hours, how much would you like to see?
I think
not give,
4 years, fine.
No, I think 4 in a renewal period is fine. I think 2
Yeah, I
years.
don't think that, I'm not, I
We're
wasn't.
do 4 a year. We're bringing that down to 16 hours.
So
of
right
other
now, we're doing
information.
2 in a
Yeah, but
two
Here's,
a year.
here's what the
4 in a
audience
renewal.
members bring to what we do, though, why I believe it's so crucial. Not just for us getting the renewal or the CEs, but we get interaction from more and more people as they start realizing they can get a good portion of their CEs by interacting with the political process that this is.
Well, I don't even know that we want to change the requirement or the two a year or 4 for renewal period. I was just, my thoughts were, it doesn't have to be this.
Right, and I just want to make sure that we have all the logistics of that in place, because there is a reason we picked February to make it simple moving forward, but we can figure all that stuff out and bring that back to the committee.
So if you remove February,
And it could
the
be any
February
meeting.
meeting.
Could be any
That's
meeting.
There are people who may have wanted to come and get that, couldn't make this.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that's not, again, I don't know if it's, not to speak for staff, a hardship to sit here as much it is to determine, making sure that they're able to determine.
We have to sit here too.
You could really.
The reason it was in February was because the board meeting, the commission, and the inspector committee was all done at the same month.
Right.
Instead of it being different times throughout the year.
Right.
They were all the same. That's why they did it in February, so it was consistent.
It's the same with our
Our
real estate.
February meeting has to happen on February because that's where elect officers work.
Right, well,
We could change that by rule too.
we could, that's a rule.
We'll
and
talk
we-
about that next meeting
Yeah.
too.
Well, it's worth the discussion, so
Yeah.
staff will come back with other, some possible alternatives and we'll talk about it then. Okay?
Okay.
All right?
Good deal.
All right.
Perfect.
Item number 13, request for future meeting agenda items.
Okay, so I have on there, I can't read my handwriting.
You want to explain your new system of giving like a little windows? of-
Well, we're gonna do that for the future meeting dates, but I'm trying to read what my handwriting was.
Well, the 535.65I, that the subcommittee wanted to
Right.
bring forward.
Right. So that's the,
3-day wait
the 3-day
period
wait
for
period
exams.
for course exams, so that's one. We'll bring this issue up back about the CE for any
Any meeting.
Any meeting.
And then the rule, the payment, 2-day rule.
Right, the 2-day rule for payment.
2 or 3 day, but tied to payment, not just delivery.
Trying to think if there was anything else. This word looks like cashew. That can't possibly be right, unless I was looking at your cashews when I wrote it.
We're not looking at the grocery list.
Yeah, so those 3 items, and I'll go back and listen to the meeting, and if there's anything else, I'll put that on for the agenda for you to approve.
We want to put the broker required payment for inclusion on service provider lists?
Yes.
Because that'll
Okay.
probably
Yes,
come back up
let's
again.
bring that back.
I'd like to see that stay on there until we at least
Nope,
get
I
to
think
some
that's,
definitive conclusion there.
Okay.
Is that it? Any other future agenda items that anybody can think of?
This whole education thing is on it?
Yeah.
Licensing?
Yeah, the
That'll-
education
that'll
item
come
will
back.
stay on there.
That'll come back.
Each
Oh.
meeting going forward, and as we see how it develops, subcommittee can start working on some suggested rules and stuff.
And just remember, the Education Subcommittee is going to meet at the end of February to talk about issues with the 4-hour legal update course and what needs to change going forward for it to be available for September 1st. That needs to be on the next agenda because you guys are going to have to make.
Well, 26th February, we're having a subcommittee meeting.
Right.
So that,
And we may have another one after
put
that,
that on
but
your list.
yeah.
so that can be
I'm going to be
approved to go to
incapacitated
commission
for a little while.
to be out in time to be effective on September.
It needs to be
Just
approved by the
update
commission in
legal
May.
ethics.
Okay.
I don't
But-
think it's going to be terribly, maybe a little more guidance on how it's applied. in the
What's that
classes.
subcommittee date?
26th February. 9 to 9, we're looking at blocking 9 to 12.
So, but that will also be on the agenda.
The SOP committee probably needs to, since we have a full committee now, we need to go ahead and set the meeting.
We're gonna wait until we get our appointments of who's actually gonna be on the full committee before we.
Maybe some new faces.
Yep.
But the SOP's already filled.
Yeah, you
right?
filled,
Yeah, we
you
filled it.
filled
That's
the
true, we
SOP.
filled it.
Our committee-
That's
Well, we
right.
can do that. We
You're
can
right.
we can do that offline unless you want to do
Okay,
it now.
yeah.
Just
I'm prepared to set it now if you guys are.
You guys want that?
Plan. You good for the 18th of March? Yes.
for the inspector committee meeting. That's the proposed.
It's a phone-in?
I'm sorry?
Yeah, okay.
Is it a phone-in, or are we driving?
I can be here.
What time? 10?
Yeah. No.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
5:30 departure time for me.
And
All right,
we've done them by phone before and in person. It just depends on the availability of people.
We can do them by phone. We don't have to be here.
Well, I was just wanting
I just like to see faces.
Yeah, phone's difficult.
So 10 o'clock on the 18th?
the 18th of March.
Okay. And I don't think we need more than an hour. It's just flushing through the rest of the draft. And we can set the next appointment to go through and nitpick those finals.
All right, so our next full meeting, which I'm assuming is what, April?
So yeah, I was going to let Carrie talk on this because we have a new process in place.
Well, we're probably going to have a new
Well, I'm sorry,
process in
thank you.
place. The commission is looking at having some of the committee meetings set, like every third Monday of the quarter, I think is what was being proposed for this, because y'all tend to meet on Mondays. So that we can have all of the meetings set up ahead of time so commission members can attend if they want to, be aware when the agenda is coming out, all of those types of items, but also to have some consistency with our prep time. Our prep time, basically we have a window after you get comments after a commission meeting, and allow time for that, and then the time that we have to start sending stuff to the governor's office and then the commission members. We have 8 days where we can have all of our advisory committee meetings. So we're trying to schedule them so that we can plan ahead.
Yeah.
As staff, as well as commission members can get it on their calendars, whoever the liaison is, they can get it on their calendars and know when it is. So the proposal, and again, this that could change at the commission meeting in February, but I think
That'd
that.
be tax day.
Yeah, it would be tax day. Is that an issue?
Oh, pardon me.
It's always,
I filed extension.
Only if you file late.
unless the government shut down again, I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, then you get an extra day. So the recommended proposed time for this committee would be the third Monday, which would be April 15th, tax day.
Do it.
I
That's perfect.
I'm sorry, would you repeat the date, please?
April 15th. We'll have extension forms here at the table for everyone.
Keep bugging me to do.
Unless, and it's difficult. I mean, this one worked out okay, but it's difficult to have subcommittee meetings right before the full committee meeting.
Yeah.
And then that usually pushes the full committee meeting back. So we want to just maintain 10.
Yeah.
10 o'clock?
Yeah.
4:15.
So February 26th will be Education Subcommittee, March 18th will be Standards, and April 15th will be the next main meeting at 10 o'clock. Everybody there?
Perfect.
Okay.
Does that work for you, Dr. Evans? Hello?
It does, yes.
Okay.
That's good.
Great. Thank you, ma'am.
Entertained motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
There's a motion.
Second.
You don't need a motion.
Comment?
Meeting adjourned at 12:59. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everyone on the phone.